At 2 a.m., my wife told me she wanted space, complete control over when we stole, when we saw each other, when I was allowed in her life.
It was nearly 2 in the morning, the kind of hour where silence feels heavier than the dark. I was sitting alone in the kitchen, staring at a cup of cold coffee and a stack of unpaid bills. I found myself wondering how 8 years of marriage had turned into something that felt more like a punishment than a partnership. The quiet was shattered when the front door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames on the wall, and in walked Felicity, my wife, or whatever version of her still existed in our home. She looked like she belonged on a glossy magazine cover, not in the middle of a broken marriage. Designer dress, flawless makeup, expensive heels clicking across the tile like a timer counting down the last few minutes of us. She didn't even look at me when she said, "Owen, we need to talk." At 2 in the morning, nothing good ever follows those words. She stood across from me, arms crossed like a runway model posing for a perfume ad, except her eyes were cold enough to burn. Then she hit me with it. It wasn't a conversation, it was a declaration. From now on, she would decide when we spent time together. In fact, she would decide everything. I was suffocating her, she said. I needed to stop being so needy. She wanted her own life, her own interests, her own world, without me asking for anything. I just blinked at her, waiting for the part where she'd crack a smile and admit she was joking. But she didn't. She just held that icy stare, and after a moment that felt like an eternity, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was utterly insane. "Fine," I said. "Thanks for the suggestion." I dumped my coffee in the sink and walked upstairs, leaving her standing there alone. For the next 2 weeks, I gave her exactly what she asked for, absolute silence, no questions about her day. No checking in, no dinner together, no conversations about bills or plans or anything at all, nothing. And to my complete surprise, those 2 weeks were the calmest, most peaceful days I'd had in months. I went to work, came home, slept soundly, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about what mood she'd bring through the door. It was a strange kind of freedom, but Felicity, I soon realized, was not built for silence. She thrived on drama, on reaction, on being the center of a storm. By the end of week 2, the fallout began. Her best friend Sabine started posting vague, passive-aggressive quotes on social media about psychological abuse and the pain of being ignored by controlling partners. Then my neighbor, a kind older woman, texted me asking if everything was okay at home because she'd seen Felicity looking distraught in the front yard. It seemed everywhere I turned, someone was reacting to her dramatics, but not a single person bothered to ask what she might have done to cause them. I was being painted as the villain in a story she was writing for everyone else. Then Thursday arrived. I was in my office at the warehouse, trying to focus on shipping manifests when my phone rang. It was Big Ray from security. "Owen, your wife's here," he said, his voice low and cautious. "And she's upset." I looked out my office window and saw her. She was striding across the dusty concrete floor in her expensive gallery clothes, hair perfect, heels completely out of place in a building filled with forklifts and the smell of diesel fumes. The entire warehouse floor seemed to slow down. Workers pretended not to stare, but you could feel the collective pause. She didn't even bother to knock. The office door flew open and she stormed in. "You've gone too far," she yelled. I didn't flinch. I just slid a thick manila envelope across the desk toward her. "Not far enough," I said calmly. She looked down at it, confused, then tore it open. Divorce papers. Her face, which had been twisted in anger, drained of all its color. "What the hell is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "You wanted independence?" I told her. "You wanted space. I'm just making it permanent." Her fury collapsed instantly into raw panic. "You can't do this," she said, her eyes wide. "Oh, but I can," I replied. "And I already packed your stuff. The boxes are by the front door." The entire warehouse had gone completely quiet. Even the hum of the forklifts had paused mid-lift. She must have realized she had an audience because she lowered her voice, hissing at me, "You fool. You really think you can just throw me away like this?" I leaned back in my chair and looked her right in the eye. "I'm just giving you exactly what you asked for," I said, and then I hit the intercom button on my desk. "Security to my office, please," Ray was there in seconds. He escorted her out as she screamed, "This isn't over, Owen. This is not over." I knew it wasn't. Not with Felicity. Drama was her lifeblood, and she wouldn't go quietly. When I got home that evening, just as I expected, she was there, waiting on the porch, tears streaking her perfect makeup. But something was different. The boxes I'd packed were gone. Her voice was soft, pleading, a tone I hadn't heard in years. "I didn't mean what I said, Owen. Please, just talk to me." I shook my head and pulled out my keys. "No," I said, unlocking the front door. "You meant every single word." As I started to go inside, she grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong, her nails digging in. "Listen to me," she demanded, her voice rising again. "Let go, Felicity," I said, my voice low and firm. She didn't. "Let go," I repeated, a little louder this time. When she only dug her nails in deeper, I pulled my arm away forcefully. She stumbled backward, nearly falling off the porch steps. I didn't hesitate. I stepped inside, locked the door behind me, and for the first time I didn't look back. I could see her through the window. She sat in her car all night, the faint glow of her phone screen illuminating her face. She was still there when I woke up the next morning. She was still there when I left for work. But by the time I came home that evening, her car was gone. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. As I pulled into the driveway, my heart sank. The front door was standing wide open. My home, my sanctuary, had been violated. The house wasn't destroyed, but it had been thoroughly rummaged through. Drawers were overturned, cushions were tossed onto the floor. A few electronics, a tablet, a laptop were missing, and 3 ugly abstract paintings were gone from the walls. They were pieces she had insisted we buy when we first got married, pieces I had always hated. I called the police. Officer Martinez walked through the scene with me, taking notes. He was sympathetic, but his hands were tied. "She still has legal residence here until the divorce is final," he explained patiently. "It's her word against yours about what was taken. It'll be very hard to press any charges," and I knew he was right. Felicity had played her hand perfectly, once again making me feel powerless. It was clear this was just the beginning of her campaign, and I knew I had to be ready for whatever came next. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear how this story unfolds, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part.